Welcome to the Supply Chain Pioneers podcast, where we highlight industry leaders on the forefront of innovation and technology in planning, procurement, and logistics. Hosted by your supply chain pro to know, Ulf Venn.
Hey, here's a quick information before the episode starts. It is a new year, it is a new me. I'm trying out a new format today, which is the Supply Chain Pioneers Newsflash. It's something that I really like to do because I want to do that together with my friend Mirko, who I worked together for a long time. Really appreciate his work, and he has some great insights to share, and I wanted to give him a platform for this as well. And yeah, I thought it might be a fun idea to have some of these episodes every once in a while. Please give me a feedback if you like it. Also give me a feedback if you don't like it and why. And yeah, have fun with the episode today. Supply Chain Pioneers is powered by Everstream Analytics. Everstream gives you the predictive insights and analytics to make your supply chain faster, smarter, safer, and leaner. Go to everstream.ai to book your demo today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Supply Chain Pioneers. And actually, Happy New Year! This is the first episode of 2024, and I want to start with a banger and actually an update and a new format that I want to introduce. And for that, I have with me Mirko. Welcome, Mirko.
Hi, Ulf.
And Mirko, can you please quickly talk about your role and what you're doing for a living?
Sure. So I am heading up our intelligence solutions team, who is responsible for monitoring supply chains around the world, knowing what's going on and knowing and identifying potential risks that are very impactful for companies in many different industries, from semiconductors to automotive and pharmaceuticals. And so I know a lot about what's going on every day, and that's kind of my job that I do for a living.
And because 2024 started quite tumultuous, I would say, right? We had the earthquake in Japan really kicking off the year. We went to the Houthis in the Red Sea, and now we had the elections in Taiwan only on Sunday. So there's a lot of things we can actually cover, and today's episode will be around these breaking news and everything that we can discuss around that. So I hope you enjoy. And we directly jump in and talk a little bit about Taiwan. So maybe, do you want to give a high-level outline of what's happening in Taiwan?
Sure. So Taiwan has basically elected a new president last weekend on Saturday. And at the same time, they had parliamentary elections. So it's a little bit similar if you compare with France. You have sort of the presidential elections, and then in a very short order, very short succession, you have the parliamentary elections. Because basically then you will have maybe sometimes the same majority, sort of the president and the party, the same party that sort of win the elections, and kind of gives the whole system more stability. What actually interestingly compared to France happened in Taiwan is that the president from one party got elected, but then he didn't get the majority in the legislative sort of body in Taiwan. So that's quite an interesting perspective. I mean, the big focus obviously in Taiwan was on the presidential election, not so much on the legislative election, because simply the president will kind of steer sort of the policy debate, but then also obviously define foreign policy, especially if you think about the whole constellation between China, the US, and Taiwan. So obviously there was a big focus on the presidential elections, but at the same time, we had the parliamentary elections, and there it seems to be, it seems to be kind of a check and balance situation where you have the opposing parties sort of winning the majority. So it's still unclear like who's going to really, be able to pass legislation in the end, because nobody really has an absolute majority. But very interestingly, there will be some kind of cooperation that is needed between the different parties to sort of pass legislation. So there won't be any dramatic shifts or any dramatic action that we can expect anytime soon.
So we hear out of the global news, right, that there's a lot of congratulations from the West on the outcome of the election, and then China seems to be more reserved. So is it fair to say that the outcome did favor the Taiwan as independent fraction in comparison to the reuniting with China fraction?
Yeah, that is definitely a fair assessment. Absolutely. So there basically have been three candidates in the end that the Taiwanese people have voted on. And if you think about the political spectrum, you will basically have pro-independence on the left, and then sort of pro-China on the right. And the party that is maybe most closely in favor of an independent Taiwan has actually won the presidential election. And so that's, a continuity of the last 8 years. We basically have seen the DPP party sort of electing the president, or sort of putting the presidential candidate in the last 8 years. It's Tsai Ing-wen, and basically her VP has won the presidential election just on Saturday. So in that way, it's a continuation of the last 8 years. And the two other candidates, which are more moderate or more pro-China, they have sort of not gained the majority in the presidential election.
So now the overarching question that everybody asks themselves is, when is China going to invade Taiwan? Can you give us a prediction?
Unfortunately not. But if one can sort of, just look at the couple of indicators, right? So I think one big indicator was this sort of, setup between president and parliament. So I think that, there's not going to be any radical policy changes. So in that sense, it provides more stability to the status quo. So that I think that's in general for world peace and geopolitics. That was a good kind of outcome. And then if you think, now we do veer into Chinese politics internally. Obviously, there is a lot of turmoil, a lot of reshuffling within the armed forces as well. So that's could be an indicator that also not all things are going well within the Chinese Communist Party, and then sort of those big organs that are obviously very important when you plan such an invasion. So that's just a high level indication of the last couple of weeks what we've seen. So I wouldn't say it's going to be likely in the next couple of months or years.
Yeah, I mean, that's good to hear, right? Still, if I would be a supply chain leader, I would definitely look into the situation continuously. Some of these, I would say, more interesting scenarios are that there are a lot of Taiwanese suppliers you might have, right, that actually produce in China, or vice versa, that you have Chinese ties into companies within Taiwan. It's heavily intertwined. And to figure that out as a first priority, I would say would be key for supply chain leaders, because these are the most easiest disrupted, right? And then you can look into potential mitigation measures, building up a second source, or maybe you say it's fine as it is because we believe Mirko and nothing is going to change very quickly. But that helps you build options, right? You have to prioritize, because probably there is a lot of ties that you might have, but these I would look at first personally. So looking at industries, maybe, can you share with us what you think, or what, based on your analysis, are the key industries to watch out for?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just coming back to your point, I think the key risk is actually, as you said, for Taiwanese companies also operating on the Chinese mainland. I think that's something that's often overlooked, right? You think about, okay, the whole sort of China-Taiwan Strait crisis. I want to sort of see how my supply chain links into Taiwan. But at the same time, there's a lot of dependencies internally, with Taiwanese companies into China, because there's a lot of investment around Shanghai, the area around Shanghai, but also Chengdu, a little bit inside China, in the sort of southwestern part. So we've seen this actually in the run-up to the election. There was another candidate that in the end dropped out, which was the founder of TSMC. And basically, TSMC is one of the key, obviously, semiconductor players in the world, but they also have a lot of dependencies. They have some manufacturing plants in China, and so there were some sort of legal audits into operations, and there were some question marks around whether they would have some licenses being revoked or being pulled into question. So that's obviously also a big risk. Is sort of what kind of levers does China have over sort of legal entities of Taiwanese companies within China? So that's something that we've already seen that that can be leveraged. In general, obviously, the semiconductor industry, I mean, that's no surprise, is going to be a key one to watch. You see more and more semiconductor investments by Taiwanese companies outside of China. So we've analyzed the last 4 years, and there have only been a fraction of the investments has actually gone into China for expansion of current plans or new plans. So Taiwanese companies such as TSMC or UMC or others, they're looking to Japan, they're looking into Southeast Asia, they're looking into Europe, they're looking into the US. I mean, we've seen this in Singapore. There's a big attraction. They're also looking into India potentially. So there's a huge plan to diversify the semiconductor supply chains, which in the end is a great thing. But a lot of the components and materials will still come from China. So not just because the end assembly is sort of happening in other places doesn't really mean that the supply chain and the sub-tier supply chain is going to diversify equally. So that's something that a key risk definitely to watch. In other industries, for sure, chemicals. Taiwan is really big in chemicals as well, and obviously other electronic components that are not necessarily chips or integrated circuits. Also, top of mind when you think about the upcoming 5 to 10 years and diversification of supply chains.
Yeah. I've said that in the past, right? If you rely on rare metals that are only available in China for your microchips, it's going to be a tall order getting away from that completely. So it's also about, I would say, engineering and R&D and investing into that to make sure that you can maybe find alternative substitute products that are more widely available. I think that's going to be also a key mission that might not be 100% supply chain related, but then in the end it is again, right? Without anything to produce, it's going to be tough to manufacture, and in the end, that's what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can have different levels of maturity in a sort of supply chain resiliency path, and definitely changing sort of product features and substitutability of certain key components, so that you're not as dependent on one specific part. Is definitely a great indicator of a high level of maturity.
Yeah. So let's face it, anything else that I have not asked you around Taiwan that you still really want to share with everybody?
Yeah, maybe what we can expect, right, in terms
Yeah,
of
exactly. Yeah, good.
reactions from China or from the US. I think there's definitely going to be maybe more of the same. I think there's a couple of key dates in the next 6 months to look out for. Obviously, the inauguration day, where we could, in the past, or the first sort of foreign visit by the Taiwanese president, where that's going to go to sort of see for potential dates of disruption in the future. The last 3 or 4, major Taiwan Strait crisis events, where we've seen a lot of military drills, a lot of military action, whether that's airplanes flying into sort of Taiwanese territory, or naval Chinese naval ships sort of controlling the area. That has typically been while either U.S. Sort of politicians have visited Taiwan, or the Taiwanese president has gone abroad and stopped in the US. So typically during these key dates, we can expect maybe more of those military exercises and potential disruption to shipping or sort of flight operations in the area.
Yeah. So from a potential impact, let's say global impact indicator, if we say, is the outcome of the Taiwan situation, is it going to be a major impact to supply chains globally? Is it a medium impact, or is it a considerable low impact? I think it's maybe an obvious question, but I still think we should talk about the impact that situation could have to global supply chains.
I mean, if anything would happen was to happen to Taiwan, that would be, I think, the Red Sea crisis times 100.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult to kind of measure it until it really happens. But it's definitely Taiwan is no Ukraine. Let's put it that way. I think obviously Ukraine equally important for the world, but in terms of the value of the products and the complexity of the products, it's not sunflower oil and wheat.
Mhm.
It's really something that you cannot at all substitute. Um, so the economic losses will be tremendous and the economic impact. And so
I would actually go so far that it's going to be the Red Sea crisis times 1,000,000 personally. So,
yeah.
but we can talk about this in a second because maybe we have different opinions on that. So let's talk about the Red Sea crisis that is going on right now. Maybe again, give us a short outline.
Mhm. Yeah, so the Red Sea crisis, I mean, essentially it's a geopolitical. If you compare maybe with the Panama Canal, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the Panama Canal for the last 12 months, which is a major shipping channel that is currently being impacted by climate change, droughts, lack of rainfall. So there's less ship traffic through the Panama Canal right now, connecting the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean. And equally important is the Suez Canal, maybe even more important. I think there's about 20% of global cargo going through the Suez Canal, whereas only 5% through the Panama Canal. And so the Suez Canal is extremely important for European supply chains, anything coming out of Asia into Europe, but then also going further to the US East Coast. It's so important that it kind of saves a lot of time, basically, right? Otherwise, you have to go around Africa to Europe, and then all of the basically there's just less capacity in the market if ships have to stay on the run on the road for longer. And the Red Sea is basically the entry point into the Suez Canal, or the sort of outgoing point if you're coming out of Europe. And so that sort of is currently under attack by through missiles and sort of drone attacks by the Houthis, who are a sort of rebellious group in Yemen that is fighting the current government. And there's different interests at play. I won't go into details, otherwise we can just do a session about this. But basically, there have been ship attacks way more than usual. So about 150, 200% increase over what is normal. And that has sort of started with the Israel-Hamas war. And so we've seen an increased number of ship attacks on initially Israel-linked ships, but now kind of really impacting all of the ships. And so there's a lot of major container carriers that have announced they would not be using this sort of shortcut, but they would sail around the Horn of Africa, or the Cape of Good Hope. And so it has currently a sort of major impact because a lot of things are being delayed. If you're waiting for a couple of containers and your ship is not going through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, then basically you're waiting currently for your containers to arrive on a ship into ports in Rotterdam or Antwerp, or even on the US East Coast. So that's kind of the situation that's going on right now. It's not a full-scale blockade of the Suez Canal, what we've seen 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when there was the Ever Given that was grounded. But basically, container traffic is significantly reduced through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. So there's a lot of ships that are not going through it. Some are, a lot of them are not. And so, yeah, there's kind of supply chains are getting longer again by 2 to 3 weeks at the moment.
I find it as a general theme, I find it extremely interesting that you see, because you see in cyber warfare more and more that supply chain companies are a target of cyber blockades, right? They want to target these kinds of logistics companies and supply chain companies in order to create a problem with the general infrastructures for companies to produce, which is interesting to see because it just shows, okay, you can hurt economies with blocking their supply chain, and that the Houthis in a more, I would call it, offline way went into the same route is, for me, interesting to see. It just shows the importance of supply chain globally for me personally, right? That it rose in fame through COVID, and now we see that it also rose in importance for stakeholders that might want to look at malicious acts, right, towards economies or
Yeah.
societies. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're on that note, I mean, I think it's if you're generally interested in supply chains or just sort of starting to have an interest in supply chains, I mean, I think there is not a week that goes by where I'm amazed to sort of see how supply chains run or are linked to specific parts of the world that you wouldn't imagine sort of having an impact on, because everything is so interconnected, right? So a couple of things that have recently blown my mind was obviously Ukraine. I mean, we know wheat, sunflower, but Ukraine was responsible. There were two plants that were responsible for 50 to 60% of neon gas that is used in the semiconductor industry, and that basically, and they were very close to the Russian border, and so basically these plants from day one they kind of went out of service, and so that's basically 50% of supply that's out of the market, right? And I don't think in terms of risk assessment anyone has really done that, right? So this is like everybody knew about that sort of sub-tier risk. So that was definitely an eye opener. But then you think about other risks like Sudan, right? I mean the civil war that's currently going on in Sudan, and you think how Sudan may be connected to supply chains, you would probably think maybe a little bit less in terms of the economic structure. But there is a key ingredient that goes into everything from marshmallows to Coke that is coming out of Sudan, majority, I think 80-90%, that's gum arabic, which is sort of harvested from the acacia tree, and basically only grows in a couple of countries in the Sahel area, right, in the Sahel Desert, including Sudan majority. And so if you think of these examples, it's really, I think supply chain is just, you have to think globally because everything can be interconnected, and the Red Sea, as you said, is no different.
Yeah. So we now know that it's hurting enough that countries like the US and the UK started to intervene. And I think also the European Union is looking into maybe sending some forces over there. Can you anything to share on that front?
Yeah, so what we're currently seeing is warships being deployed. So a lot of the attacks right now, they're continuing, similar to what we've seen in November and December. But basically, a lot of the missiles and drone attacks are being intercepted by warships. Some sort of container ships also get sort of escort passage with sort of military escorts, military ships. So we're seeing that especially for example, some of the big container lines, if their ships are sort of sailing under the U.S. flag, for example, they would get sort of extra security. But basically, the situation is very unchanged. You just have more military presence in the area that is sort of intercepting the drones, so they don't have as much impact. There's still a huge number of ships that actually go through it. If you think about oil tankers, chemical tankers, even sort of other cargo ship, bulk carriers, car carriers, so they're also going through it. It's just really the global container carriers that have been hit maybe the most, and then have sort of said, globally, or that they will kind of not use that area anymore. But there's still container ships also going through that area. And so essentially the impact is just less. There's less ships that are being hit because of these interceptions, but the threat is still there. And there's, I think, not a feasible way of military ships to accompany all of the commercial ships that are going through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. So it's really unclear actually what needs to change for all of the global container carriers to kind of go back to using the Suez Canal, because obviously in terms of once you now sort of started to reroute, all of the schedules are being updated, and sort of I think everything is factored in, costs are increasing, and so if in the end you pay more, but then the ship that your container is on arrives 2 weeks earlier, but you paid like double the price. I think right now, I think global schedules are kind of probably aligning more on the sailing around the Cape of Good Horn, and it's really unclear what needs to happen from a security perspective for them to actually go back on a ad hoc basis. Maersk has actually done it, and then they have sort of been attacked once more around the start of the year, and then immediately kind of have said, okay, we will stay with the longer route for now. So if you're really, and also worried about your reputation and your sort of, how you're being perceived in the world as being responsible, I think nobody wants to kind of change tune and change sort of the stance every day.
So before we go into impact, maybe also, and because you already highlighted it, I think that's going to be a short answer. How is the situation going to develop in the next 6 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right now, as I said, I think the global container or global vessel schedules are being adapted and sort of are it's more likely than not, I would say, that in the next 3 months we won't see any changes. That most of the carriers will continue to go around because basically it gives them more flexibility. It gives them more. They can still use the Suez Canal and then have their ships in port earlier, but to sort of plan for the longer round, and then maybe if something good happens, then they can go back. But basically, right now, a lot of the container carriers, they're surcharging. Their sort of stock prices are also increasing. So there is a certain economic benefit right now that hasn't been there before. So in a way, it's not bad actually for the shipping industry if you think about the shipping players and not the customers.
No, also because of COVID, they built up massive overcapacities. And now is a good situation to maybe use that overcapacity. So actually, I think for them, from a shipping line perspective, it comes at the right time and also helps them to make a little bit of more money that before it looked kind of dire anyway. So we might help this part of the economy. And then for the others, frankly, I just personally don't think it's such a big deal because in the end, it's going to be 8 days more. So you carry for some products 8 days more of inventory for a while, which, okay, it is what it is, right? You can't avoid it. You pay a little bit more, but I think actually over time that will pan out because there's going to be competition is starting there as well, and then in the end prices will drop to a certain extent again. And you will have obviously, right, for those that were shipped and then now there's a delay and the first ones that go around, it's going to be a problem, and maybe some companies will face a production outage because of that. If they're good, probably not.
This is what we're seeing, right? I mean, I think it's going to be. I think Tesla announced last Friday, Volvo. I think IKEA has already previously announced that, so not a big surprise. I think IKEA, a lot of bulky products. Obviously, if there's a 2-week delay, they're not keeping all that inventory of cupboards and tables and so on, but at the same time also low cost, right? So there was no incentive to kind of move to air freight or whatnot. I think it's more surprising. I don't know. I would be interested. What do you think about Tesla, and especially Tesla, right? Maybe there's some batteries, maybe some electronic components or EV components that are difficult to replace. Maybe also not easy to ship or to just use air cargo instead. But I don't think we will see that much more. I think other companies will just be adjusting their production schedules, maybe slowing down production a little bit. There's going to be a week of 2 or of some sort of short-term work or short furloughs or whatever. But I think we were not going to see sort of production stoppages infinitively. I think it's just an adjustment period until everybody factors in that Shanghai to Rotterdam is now sort of 40 days again instead of 28.
Yeah. With Tesla, I think there are several reasons for that, maybe. First reason can be very simple. The plant is only online for a couple of months to a year by now, I think. And maybe the supply chain is still trying to get a trying to get a hold on the entire situation anyway on a daily basis, right? I mean, building up a new plant and really oiling the machine, that can take some time. So maybe it's just because they're on the day-to-day, it's already stressful. This deviation just didn't give them enough leeway to really act on this situation as fast as they should have. But then also, I do believe the demand for electric vehicle in Europe dropped quite significantly recently. So it could also be that is a welcomed excuse to just put things
Absolutely.
on short-term labor, right, and get some government funding. There's a lot of different reasons for that. It can also just be a mistake. But yeah, I think it's
You
a
have to
surprise and
wonder
not a
like
surprise.
what is the advantage of actually saying that it's the Red Sea crisis? I think there's definitely some other
Yeah.
motivations at play
Mm.
because I mean, if you analyze it quite openly, I think the entire automotive, I mean, there's no reason why one would be more affected than another, because the truth is everybody is using this route, everybody's using it. So maybe
Yeah.
that just means that they have less inventory or just less organized at the moment.
Or
Um,
it's just because they are the only ones going fully electric, right? That it's really the battery. We really don't know, right? There are so many different
yeah.
reasons why that can be, but I also think maybe it's just trying to carry as minimal inventory as possible on a very long route. There are so many different options, but there are some examples here on what could be the reason. Maybe somebody from Tesla is actually, if you want to, you can reach out to me and we can talk about this. That would be super interesting on Supply Chain Pioneers as a podcast. Um, Good. So I want to talk a little bit about the impact, and I start, okay, because I already said I think this situation is not super dire personally, because in the end, if you adjust your S&OP planning, if you add eight to maybe 2 weeks more, it's bad for your inventory and it's not good on your financial report, and it impacts quite a bit, but you can. I mean, if you really want to, you can keep the operation running quite smoothly, but it needs a 3-week transition period, essentially, right? So it's a mitigatable impact that might involve some money, but it's kind of doable if you scramble a little bit in comparison to Taiwan, where I think just could mean the end for a lot of products globally. Yeah. And yeah. So that's my take. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's in no way comparable. I think the two comparisons I've seen is one, like how does it compare to the Suez Canal, like the total blockade when the Evergreen uh, sort of ran aground, and how does it
Mhm.
compare to COVID?
Yeah.
So on the first comparison, I would say the the Ever Given grounding was definitely more impactful because it was at a time that supply chains were already disrupted and sort of there was container shortages, there were semiconductor. I mean, basically supply chains were in upheaval mode already. Early 2021, right, a year into the pandemic. So the material shortages, the displaced equipment. I mean, everything was going off the rails. A lot of congestion going on and in different parts of the world. So that certainly didn't help. It was at a time of huge demand and also the uncertainty, right? I think everybody waited for a long time before they kind of said we're going to take the long route because obviously you could not really imagine that it would like a ship would stay grounded for 6 days. Maybe at worst maybe 2 days, but everybody was waiting. So basically, container shipping or in general shipping got to a complete standstill for like 6 days because only probably like 10% of the ships that were supposed to go through the Suez Canal were actually then really actively taking the decision to reroute. Everybody else was waiting. So in that sense, it really kind of everybody lost 6 days, and then you add all the congestion later on. So I think definitely much more impactful at the time. COVID, uncomparable, uncomparable because COVID is obviously right now it's really only affecting a certain passage, right? You just add a number of days. But in terms of the uncertainty, now that everybody moved to around the Africa road, there's no more uncertainty. You just know what the worst case is, right? With COVID, obviously, there's lockdowns and there's shipment restrictions. There was a lot of uncertainty, but
Yeah.
right now, there's no more uncertainty actually.
Yeah. Absolutely correct. It's perfect. So let's go to my last point, maybe, because we now have the two major crises that one we potentially see, and then also one that is going on right now. So maybe let's have a quick review of one that already happened and started the year, which is an earthquake in Japan. I think we don't need a big summary because it's an earthquake happening in Japan. but can you share maybe a little bit on the implications of the earthquake and what were the aftermath and maybe what is still going on repairs right now?
Yeah. So it's definitely, so the impact was definitely maybe less feared than expected. I don't know what would have been expected, but I guess everybody was thinking about 2011. There was definitely tsunami waves, but not to the extent that we've seen in 2011, right? So most of the impacts that we're seeing were definitely on the factory side. They were obviously logistically speaking in the majorly affected area. In Western Japan, there are still roads that are closed because of damages, and so there's transportation challenges. And then there's still a lot of repairs going on at factories. So, for example, if you take Murata, a key sort of electric component manufacturer that I think over 11 plants in Western Japan, and so until you sort of make sure that all your equipment is in good health, right? If you have a huge plant, that can take a couple of days. So a lot of their plans actually came back online gradually from January 3rd, January 4th, January 5th. But there's still a few plans, actually, about 20% that are still out right now. So depending on how good they can, especially these bigger players, they can sort of shift production to other plants that are up and running already, and how big the demand is right now. I think still it could, right now it's probably a better time than had this happened in 2021 when there was actually another Japanese earthquake that then sort of added to the semiconductor shortage at the time, and sort of shortage of multiple different components. So in that sense, it's not too bad, but it was still very impactful, and there's still a lot of suppliers that are reeling from it. Yeah, we shouldn't really be underestimating this, but at the same time, right now, the level of orders is definitely not at the same as we've seen it in 2020 and 2021.
Good. I hope that's some good news for supply chain leaders out there. Still something to monitor, right? Especially if one of your active suppliers has feedback that is affected. There could be for some surprises out of the sub tiers, right? Some ripple effects that often takes 6 to 8 weeks until you hear about this. So we're not there yet. We're not out of the woods yet, but maybe we will know more very soon. And obviously, if you have sub tier visibility, you probably already know more. Mirko, that's it for today. First of all, thank you so much. Super insightful. And would you be up to do that again if we have like several crises again that we can discuss together?
For you, anytime off.
Forcing your hand a little bit here. It's great. Okay. Mirko, thank you so much. And to all listeners, I want to say bye-bye.
Thank you.
This was Supply Chain Pioneers. Thanks for watching, listening, or however you are enjoying this podcast. You can find Supply Chain Pioneers on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all other major podcast players, as well as on YouTube at Ulf Talk Supply Chain. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See you next time.